But right now, we want to talk about the dangers of summer. This time of year is the one young people probably look forward to the most because it represents fun and freedom. But experts say this is also the time of year when bad things are more likely to occur. Kurt Erickson is with the Washington Regional Alcohol Program. It's good to have you back. Thanks very much for your time today. What sorts of dangers lurk this time of year for teens and young adults?
Well, it's that time of year, specifically May through August, where the majority of teen traffic crashes occur in this country. Nearly 40% of all teen traffic deaths occur during these months. And the months that we're in right now are actually the most dangerous. June and July are the most deadly months when it comes to teen crashes. And I think it's for the reason being of how you started off the segment here, which is that it's unstructured time. That this is the time of year where you have unstructured time, you have least expectations for kids, and they're having elective driving and so forth. And an organization like mine, our concern is that they're also getting behind the wheel after drinking.
Is there anecdotal or other evidence to suggest that when young people are driving in a sort of purposeful fashion, they're getting up, going to school, going to the job, going to an athletic event, there's more focus and less mind-altering substance involved than in summer, where each day may be different, and there are these other factors mixing in?
Absolutely, and it's actually structured time. I don't think it's coincidence that you're having this spike in teen traffic fatalities during these summer months. Even on a smaller scale, on a microcosm, where the National Institute of Health does a study and says that teens of highly structured homes are less actually to engage in substance abuse than teens in overly structured or formally structured homes. So again, I think it's the structured time. And we put tips on our website that range from a number of things, which we'll talk about this morning, but one of them is to create structure. Is actually have tasks for your teens to do. Give them responsibilities so they don't have this elective time that they're getting behind the wheel of a car for either elective driving or getting behind the wheel of a car when they've actually engaged in substances, including alcohol.
But it's interesting. We have young people who are so focused on grades, academics, the extracurricular activities they need for their own enrichment and for their resume, jobs, money, all the rest of it, that we do want them having downtime, fun time, to be able to relax and kick back, because we are in a world where for a lot of folks it's that drive, it's that almost that overdrive that is posing a problem in terms of different things that manifest in young people's lives. So how do we manage both? How do we keep summer a time of fun? How do we make sure that there are less pressured moments in a young person's life, but not putting them at risk for some of these scary numbers you've laid out?
Well, the Washington Regional Alcohol Program puts 10 tips on our website that are actually geared towards parents to keep their teens safe. One of them is basically understanding the realities. The realities are that right now in this country, 24% of teens killed in traffic crashes have been drinking. 28%, so over a quarter, actually had not just been drinking, but would be considered legally drunk by their blood alcohol concentration levels in all 50 U.S. states, as well as the District of Columbia, meaning they have 0.08 or higher. This means that these kids have access to alcohol, they're utilizing alcohol, they're then getting behind the wheel of a car, which is compounding the situation. I think one of the things we really want parents to know, however, that it's not just about the car, it's not just about drunk driving. It's about having impaired judgments because of alcohol that will have them ride with an impaired driver, have them take other risks in terms of putting them at risk of impaired judgment in terms of unplanned pregnancies and sexually transmitted diseases, HIV risk, and so forth. It's the risk that they're taking because they're impaired and because their judgment is impaired.
Phone lines open as we talk with the head of the Washington Regional Alcohol Program, Kurt Erickson. If you're a parent, grandparent, guardian, other with questions or comments, do join the conversation right now. Those of you watching live in the 10 o'clock hour, we've posted the number on your screen. We hope you'll dial at this moment so we can talk with you, hear from you. 703-387-1020 is the number here. We'll go to the phones as your questions and comments come in. You make a good point, and it was one I was just going to touch on. Driving is a big part of it. It is not the only part. All manner of human interaction is affected by drug and alcohol use. What happens, and I know the laws vary a lot by state, and you track each state's individual laws, but in general, what happens if a young person blows a .02?
That is a great question.
They nurse a beer,
right.
They're not bombed, but they're 18, 19, what have you, and they get behind the wheel. Maybe they do something that attracts the attention of a law enforcement officer. Maybe it's just bad luck.
Right.
They blow a .02. What happens?
First of all, that's a great question because it automatically hits on the point that we talk, all of our interviews with Sober Riding throughout the year that we do, we talk about .08. We just said that that's the legal limit by which to be charged with drunk driving in all 50 U.S. states, including the District of Columbia. But there are limits below that. There are limits below that for commercial vehicle operators. There's also limits below that, you just said, .02, which is virtually any amount of alcohol that's applied to teens. So D.C., Maryland, Virginia each have zero tolerance laws, making it a crime to be driving with .02 or higher in your bloodstream. The laws constantly change. For instance, just last year, the law, 2 years ago in Maryland, the law changed that if you're convicted of drunk driving and you're under the age of 21 in Maryland, you're going to be now part of that universe that's subject to ignition interlock devices. You have to have now installed in your vehicle an in-car breathalyzer that you need to operate every single use of the car to show that you've not been drinking. But getting back to .02, I'll give you an example in Virginia. A number of years ago, Virginia got really tough on underage drinkers. So if you're not convicted of a .02 or higher in Virginia and you're under the age of 21, in addition to being guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor, you're not going to lose your driver's license for a year. By the way, it's not up to a year. It's not up to judicial discretion. It's a minimum mandatory penalty of a year. That's important because there's never going to be political will to jail teens. I get that. Fines too often are rendered meaningless because they're written a stroke of a check by parents.
Right.
But a driver's license sanction, there's not an 18-year-old on the planet that wants his mother to drive him on a date.
Well, can you imagine,
that's an impact.
Can you imagine getting in the car, being a teenager, going out on a date, and having your date have to convince the car they're so how humiliating? I mean, and yeah. I'm not being flipped to minimize the real dangers,
right.
The life and death dangers of impaired driving. That's not funny.
Right.
But to look at this other element of life, can you imagine getting in the car with someone you're on a second date with and they've got to blow into a thing to get the car to start?
And I think that's important. I think that humiliation, I think emasculation are themes that actually we do in some of our messages to young drivers. These are the things that resonate. And it's important to recognize the things that resonate because it's sometimes not about jail time. They don't think they're going to go to jail. They don't think that they're going to be caught. And they don't think that they're going to kill themselves. But the number one consequence of young drivers, when we poll them every single year, is the killing or harming of someone else, which is one of the reasons that when we do craft messages for this hard-to-reach audience, we're telling them, okay, you don't believe it's going to happen to you, but it could happen to your little brother, little sister, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever's riding in the car with you.
And sadly, we know from the news and from our own experience that in many schools, there's been that experience, that first-hand knowledge
right.
and experience of a peer who leaves school Friday, doesn't come back Monday,
right.
and everyone now has lost a friend forever.
Exactly.
And we weep for those situations because of the obvious tragedy involved, but we hope that when that happens, that the learning, that the internalized learning is wide and
absolutely.
deep.
And it hopefully resonates back to the parents as well, that they get wind of this. And that's one of the things is to underscore is that studies time and time again show that parents have an integral role in whether their kids engage in risky behaviors, including the use of alcohol. So don't underestimate the role of parents as a solution here.
Do you get? I get the feeling, and I want to know if you can back me up on this, that a lot of young people have gotten the message. They've learned from the mistakes of prior generations, and they've learned how to have fun on a Friday or Saturday night or whenever with friends, and it doesn't need to involve alcohol.
Yeah.
They're not. One does not drive the other, nor is it dependent on the other.
You know, you're very right about that, and we shouldn't shy away from the good news. The teen drinking rates, whether it be nationally or local, are consistently going down. What's unfortunate is that those that are engaging in alcohol use are doing it to excess. So they're engaging in binge drinking, and they're also engaging it in more than a couple times in a 2-week period. And there's an increased desensitivity or an insensitivity to it, where the majority of teens polled don't view a huge risk in terms of binge drinking over a weekend.
And there is no way that for young adults who are still developing physically, that amount of alcohol dumped into your system is anything but horrific.
Absolutely.
Even if you avoid all the other dangers
absolutely.
We've been talking about. Kurt Erickson, head of the Washington Regional Alcohol Program. Give your website a plug.
It's WRAP.org, WRAP.org. It stands for the Washington Regional Alcohol Program.
Thanks for being with us
Thanks
today.
for having us.
Good to have you here as always. When we return on this Monday, a quick update on the hour's top stories and the midweek forecast, and then Post reporter Mike DeBonis on the world according to Barry.